Good evening, everyone, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful Wednesday. Welcome to Gut Over It. My name is Dr. Vivian Asamoah. I am a gastroenterologist and functional medicine provider in Katy, Texas. And thanks for joining us on our series of Gut Over It. We have gone live every night at 9 p.m. in the month of February, discussing an important GI topic that everyone kind of wants to know about, everyone wants to discuss with their gastroenterologist or PCP, and just shedding some light, shedding some research, and answering questions. It's been amazing to see so many of you guys online asking questions, sharing ideas, sharing recipes. It's been absolutely fabulous. I thought Gut Over It wouldn't be Gut Over It without a series on inflammatory bowel disease. And tonight we'll be focusing on diet and the impact of nutrition on inflammatory bowel disease. But before that, I just want to welcome everyone here tonight. If you're listening to this live, please go ahead and put in a like, share some love, leave a comment. And if you're listening to this on the replay, enjoy. Ask any questions you'd like. I will definitely answer them as I have time during the week, but I will definitely get to them. I put on my Wakanda shirt today. This is my Ghanaian embroidered top, lace top, as I am celebrating Black History Month and honoring a hero that's definitely an African American Black hero that has impacted medicine and impacted my life personally. And tonight, actually, my wonderful physician assistant, Donna Lee, strongly urged me to talk about Henrietta Lacks. And so you all may have heard about Henrietta Lacks. As I trained at Johns Hopkins, Baltimore, there was a lot of talk about Henrietta Lacks and a lot of controversy in the African American community about, sometimes unfortunately larger institutions using at some point in time back then and maybe up till now even a lot of Black people for research unknowingly and complications developing. But I think on a positive note, and for the sake of research, Henrietta Lacks made a tremendous difference. So she was an African American mother of five who unfortunately developed cervical cancer in her late 20s to early 30s and actually went to Johns Hopkins Hospital, was under the care of a doctor, I believe, George Gay, and worked with this doctor who cultured her cervical cells and was able to use a lot of her cells, and her cells were actually quite specific because her cells did not die, her cervical cells did not die, and they were able to use her cells, unlike many, to study research, to study the effect of chemotherapy, radiation therapy on the growth of cancer cells. And her cells are used in research all over the world. They've been cloned. They're known as the HeLa cells. And so, but through her name, Henrietta Lacks. And so tonight, as part of Black History Month, we are honoring this wonderful lady who made such an impact in the world of oncology and in the world of medicine altogether. I thank you guys for joining me tonight. If you want to learn more about Henrietta Lacks, Johns Hopkins has a lot of information out there. There's some great YouTube videos that I shared with my kids about her tonight, just so they could learn a little bit more about this wonderful woman. But tonight we're talking about Crohn's disease, well, inflammatory bowel disease, and that typically is Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, and actually things like lymphocytic colitis and diverticulitis are all under that realm of inflammatory bowel disease. But we're focusing a lot more on just Crohn's and ulcerative colitis because we are actually seeing a really, really, really rapid incidence, high rise of inflammatory bowel disease in the Western world, but at an even more increasing rate of incidence in places that did not have inflammatory bowel disease, or it wasn't reported that much, and that is in Asia, in South America, and Africa. The numbers are increasing over the last decade. And I think this is where a lot of interest started developing in terms of what is the impact of nutrition. And as those places are seeing more of a Western diet, unfortunately, we are seeing more inflammatory bowel disease in those populations. So, when I studied medicine and started studying medicine about 15, 20 years ago, we knew there was a clear difference. We thought, Crohn's disease, Ashkenazi Jews, Caucasian patients, but now we clearly see that there's clearly an impact on diet and nutrition. And we used to see a lot more Crohn's and ulcerative colitis in African Americans who were here in the United States as compared to Black people in Africa. But right now, the incidence is almost, it's definitely rising in Africa. And that's because of Western culture and Westernization. Like when I go home to Ghana, like there's Kentucky Fried Chicken. Unfortunately, there's McDonald's, there's all this fast food, all these Western diets, which are clearly associated with inflammatory foods, pro-inflammatory foods. And, most of my patients will come to me and say, I was diagnosed with IBD and my doctor, my previous GI or whoever said, just eat whatever you want, eat whatever you want. There's no relationship with food. FALSE, 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 false. There is absolutely a relationship with food. And if you kind of look at the etiology, like where IBD comes from, fair enough, it's an autoimmune disease. We don't understand all of it, but we know there's a component of genetics. We know there's a component of environmental factors, and environmental factors include toxins, pollutants, they include food, and they include infection exposure. So what is the trigger? What happens? What is the thing that turns on that gene that is already predisposes someone to Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, right? It's either a parasitic infection, bacterial infection, a food that you are sensitive to, or that is just, unfortunately genetically modified, right? Use of antibiotics to feed the animals that raise it, just a very high pro-inflammatory food that tends to be the trigger. And sometimes it can even just be, I ate at this restaurant and ever since then, my gosh, I developed Crohn's disease, or I ate this kind of food, I went off to college, I ate this food for a year, and ever since then, I developed Crohn's disease. So any doctor that says there is no association, it's absolutely false, because now there are so many studies. And there was actually a recent study published in the Gastro-American Journal, the Red Journal, the AGA Journal, that clearly showed not only, so they took a population over a quarter of a million, right, and studied these people, men and women, with IBD or without IBD, just a mixed population for 20 to at least 40 years. And they looked at what they were eating and they categorized what they were eating, right? High inflammatory foods versus, a healthy diet, lots of fruits and vegetables. And they actually noticed that people who ate high inflammatory foods, and we'll talk about what those foods are, had a higher rate of developing Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, and also of having more severe disease. So that was one of the landmark studies that for the first time showed gastroenterologists what, again, I'll say, what naturopaths have always known, what integrative doctors have always known, and a lot of our strong dietitians and nutritionists have always known, that diet and pro-inflammatory foods absolutely have an impact on triggering the disease, meaning causing the disease, as well as making the disease worse. So increased severity, increased risk of complication. Now let's look at what they categorize as pro-inflammatory foods, like foods that make things worse. Processed meats, okay, dairy. When you talk about processed meats, don't forget about sausage. Those sausages that are processed, deli meat is processed, right? And then of course, processed meats that you find at the store, right? That are not grass-fed, that are not organic, and stores that you find, that chicken that isn't quite chicken, at the chicken McNugget, whatever, so that's all highly processed, right? And then, high sugar, of course, corn, of course, lots of refined carbohydrates, sugary beverages, anything that's fast food is processed, right? And that is all pro-inflammatory. The wrong types of fats, right? Cooking in the wrong types of, all of those things were considered as pro-inflammatory food. As a matter of fact, alcohol in excess, beer, wine, all of those things considered as pro-inflammatory foods. So they just kind of listed them in categories, right? They didn't actually say that gluten in itself, on its own, was a pro-inflammatory food. But you can imagine the way gluten is made these days, the way gluten has been developed and genetically modified, is why I think a lot of people are so sensitive to it and react to it, and it causes inflammation in their system, right? And so those groups of food are called pro-inflammatory foods. I forget, dairy was a big one that was on top of the list. And so this wasn't just only in relation to lactose intolerance, but also in relation to just the casein and developing that sensitivity. So again, pro-inflammatory food, refined carbohydrates, a lot of sugar, a lot of sodas, right? High fructose corn syrup, right? They included in their processed meats. We spoke about that. We don't always think about that. And then, of course, the gluten, some of the very, very refined grains as well. So, and dairy. So those are things that you want to avoid. And I think this is especially important for people raising children, because we know these foods can trigger disease, and we know these foods are so genetically modified. There's so many antibiotics in them that this is the time, especially if there's a family history of inflammatory bowel disease, that you really want to make sure your children understand what they're eating so they don't develop these inflammatory bowel disease, these autoimmune conditions. And if you do have already have a diagnosis of IBD, these are the foods that, along with you decide that you're going to take biologics, right? Like Humira and Remicade and these anti-TNF biologics that modulate your immune system, steroids, mesalamine. Along with doing all that, it is not okay to eat processed foods all the time. It is not okay to have refined sugars. It's almost like you're just causing additional insult to what's going on, and you're not treating the root cause, which could absolutely make a difference. Absolutely make a difference. Let's talk about, so those are sort of long-term foods. One thing I learned from the study, and I think looking at all the research, is that we also don't want our patients with inflammatory bowel disease to over-restrict. Right? We spoke about this when we spoke about food reactions, where people are like, I don't eat gluten, I don't eat dairy, I don't eat this, I don't eat this, and they're stuck with eating 5 foods every day for the rest of their lives. That is also avid restriction. We don't want that, because you lose diversity, you lose micronutrient support, and your body just can't function that way. So diversity is really important in being able to eat a bit of everything, but avoid the processed stuff, right? Avoid the foods that you're sensitive to. And there again, may be helpful to do things like food sensitivity testing with, someone who really understands the process. There's also a difference in what to do. We're kind of talking about long-term prevention and what you should do long-term. And you'll hear about many different types of diet. They're all very similar in many ways. Some are a little bit more restricted than others. So you've got things like the IBD aid diet, the specific carbohydrate diet, the autoimmune paleo diet, the low FODMAP diet. These are all diets that patients with inflammatory bowel disease kind of lean towards, use as a basic standard. But these are diets that I find help put you in remission. These are all elimination diets that help get you in remission when you have the disease or you're going through a flare. These are not diets that you should sustain forever. It's always very important to try and bring foods back when you can. So when you're going through a flare, it's important to definitely cut back on food. In a lot of patients, we recommend even intermittent fasting. We recommend definitely a very low inflammatory diet, right? Really restricting a lot of inflammatory foods. We also recommend avoiding high residue foods, especially if you have Crohn's disease and you have strictures and narrowing and you're eating all this roughage. And so high residue foods are foods that will get stuck. Ultimately, it doesn't digest very well, so we'll get stuck if there's an area that's very inflamed or narrowed, right? So even vegetables with thick skins, uncooked vegetables, these are things we ask that you avoid when you're going through a flare. When you're going through a flare, you want to cut back and you want to let the bowel rest for several days. And a lot of our patients going through a flare, we will eliminate. We will go through an elimination protocol because it works exceptionally well. And when we're going through those flares and elimination protocols, I took what we generally recommend. We recommend a lot of bone broth. We recommend fermented foods that are rich in prebiotics. We recommend ginger. We recommend natural fish to get the omega fish oil, and antioxidants like blueberries and things like that. That's what we try and incorporate into the diet. And that's what we know helps long term. Okay, so I hope this was helpful, guys. We talked, I just want to touch on the impact of using food as nutrition more so than focusing on probiotics and all those supplements. The problem is when you are actually going through a flare, we want to hold away from probiotics because it could, probiotics are, bacterial strains. It could trigger infection and inflammation. And there are specific probiotics that we prefer to use for ulcerative colitis versus versus Crohn's. So please talk to your gastroenterologist, who should be well versed in what type of probiotics work for which patients. And what else? So we always want to go with food first, right, as medicine, because in our practice of functional gastroenterology at my office, we have a 12-week program for our patients with inflammatory bowel disease who have either mild or moderate disease or have severe disease and want to know what to do in terms of nutrition to optimize remission and stay in remission. And we put them on a 12-week program, and it's an intense program where we focus a lot on education about these foods, what are pro-inflammatory foods, what are less inflammatory foods, what should you eat. We walk them through the elimination protocol. We do food sensitivity testing if we need to. And we also work with our dietitian and health coach to help reintroduce these foods when it's time. I've also done a lot of research on the best botanicals and supplements to help our patients with inflammatory bowel disease. So I will generally recommend that. And I will say, as a gastroenterologist who's been in practice for quite some time, and as someone who has been studying functional medicine for now about 5 years and now practicing it myself in so much depth, I have been so amazed to see the impact on food only as nutrition in achieving remission in a lot of my patients with IBD. Unbelievable. We don't use medication. We don't use, just purely trying to focus on using food as medicine and getting the right supplements on board. And I think that's been one of the success, but you got to do the research. You have to work with someone who knows what they're doing. And you also have to work with someone who can actually test your stool, see how you're doing in terms of inflammation, do a colonoscopy and reassess your symptoms, and also guide you in terms of the supplements. So they're using an evidence-based approach to this functional gastroenterology approach. And I hope that's what we do for a lot of our patients. We get a lot of great feedback, and it's phenomenal. As a gastroenterologist, I now realize that maybe 10 years ago, if my practice had been different, I think my advice and my approach to a lot of my patients would have been very, very different. And I really do think the world of functional medicine and just going back to root medicine has really changed my outlook as a physician. So tonight, thank you guys. I went on for too long. I'm sorry. Thank you very much. I hope you guys thought this was helpful. If you guys want any information on the elimination protocol that we use for our patients with IBD, it's called the Renew Diet or the IBDA diet. Actually, it was one of my patients that introduced me to the IBDA diet, and I've used that for so many other patients, and it's worked exceptionally well. Just put in a message in the comment, and I would be happy to share that with you. And again, tonight we are commemorating and honoring Henrietta Lacks and all the work she has, all the what she has contributed to medicine today in terms of oncology research. Have a wonderful rest of the week, guys, and take care. Bye-bye. This was Gut Over It, and I'm Dr. Vivian Asamoah.